On March 22nd, 2018, a humble farmer sat at home alone when he noticed something move quickly past his window. When he got up to investigate, he approached the back door of his house, opened up, and was greeted with quite a sight.
County 911, what's the address of the emergency?
This is Don Sipple calling, and I have a young lady that just came to my house, and somebody attacked her, and she needs a doctor. Her clothes are all torn,
And is she injured?
yeah, she's injured. Her mouth is kind of got some blood around it. Her clothes are all torn.
Okay, and she's by herself?
She's by herself. She walked to my house here just recently. She's in kind of bad shape. She says she don't know.
Okay, let me put you on hold. Do not hang up. I'm going to start some help, okay?
90-year-old Don Sipple, a farmer living in Springbrook Township in Dunn County, Wisconsin, unknowingly welcomed in and comforted a shaken and traumatized young girl who is also a brutal murderer. Well, that escalated quickly. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the Hawk and Load Case Files. I'm your host, Hawk and Load. Art, philosophy, lies, and murder. That's the theme of today's case. In March of 2018, a young man was found brutally stabbed and slashed to death in the backseat of a car. A day prior, a young woman, Ezra McCandless, was found wandering bloodied, muddied, and shoeless in a dazed state down a rural road in Dunn County, Wisconsin. At first glance, you'd never think that Ezra McCandless was capable of basically any crime, let alone a grisly, slasher-esque murder. Today we're going to explore the stages of her story as told by her in the aftermath and her defense and trial testimony. If hipsters and their pretentious personalities easily trigger you, you might want to sit this one out. I had to listen to so much poetry for this video, and I'm ready to rip my eyes out and eat them. But before I go and do that, let's get into the story of Ezra McCandless and her unfortunate victim, Alex Woodworth. Murder is a very male-oriented event in general. Not only are men 98% of the perpetrators, they're also roughly 78% of the victims. Humans in general tend to stereotype by nature. It's likely the result of thousands of years of tribalism and survival. When you think of a stereotypical murderer, you're likely to imagine someone like Ted Bundy or John Wayne Gacy. A large, menacing man will almost certainly come to mind. When you see someone like this, I imagine putting her into that role is tough. And beyond just imagining her as a murderer, it's tough to see her as a brutal slasher. However, that is precisely the category Ezra McCandless falls into. And for one Alex Woodworth, the callous thoughts and actions of McCandless would lead to his grisly and untimely demise. Eau Claire, Wisconsin is the state's 8th largest city. It has the second fastest population growth in the state as well, thanks to its budding and lively art and music scene. It's home to the University of Wisconsin Eau Claire and is constantly buzzing with young adults at the starting lines of their lives, looking to express themselves and change the world. On October 6, 1997, Ezra McCandless was born Monica Kay to her then 14-year-old mother, Rosalina. Her biological father was never involved in her life, and when she was 4 years old, she was adopted by her stepfather, Josh Ain. Her mother and stepfather divorced when Ezra was 12, but she remained a very close relationship with him. Throughout high school, Ezra explored her gender identity and different pronouns and generally wanted to find and express her true self. She legally changed her name to Ezra McCandless in 2015. McCandless was a dedicated artist, often creating and exchanging art with her friends as they hung out in a coffee shop in Eau Claire. To explain the alleged motive behind McCandless's crime, I have to try and detail the complicated relationships she had. She was in somewhat of a love triangle, but with 3 guys instead of 2. So I don't really know what to call it. A love square? I don't know. You get the point. In the late summer of 2017, McCandless met a 33-year-old National Guard medic named Jason Mengel.
I met Jason outside of a coffee shop one night after a music festival. He let out a big sigh, and I was curious why he was doing that. He seemed quite frustrated, so I said, "Well, what's the matter?" And we instantly started talking, and we talked almost all night. Well, after we exchanged information, we had begun texting and back and forth, and we started seeing each other after.
They began a romantic relationship and quickly moved in together. By the fall of that year, Ezra was pregnant and on her birthday drove to Minneapolis to have an abortion.
I was very sick, and I had been throwing up for weeks, and I decided to go buy a pregnancy test.
Where were you when you took the pregnancy test? Do you remember?
I was at a gas station.
And what was the result from the doctor's office?
I was in fact pregnant. I ultimately decided to terminate the pregnancy early on.
Why?
I wasn't sure what to do at that time. I was scared. I was so young. I was confused as to really what to do.
Around that same time, she met a barista and philosophy major by the name of Alex Woodworth.
I met Alex Woodworth one night when I noticed him. He was writing alone inside a bar called The Joint. He just seemed very focused, and I thought it was interesting that he was alone amongst all these people, so focused on his writing. I was curious as to how he could focus alone on this topic. I approached him and I said, "What are you writing about? Just tell me about it."
Not long after, she began a secret sexual relationship with Alex behind Mengel's back. With Mengel on deployment, it wasn't tough for her to keep it a secret. While this was going on, Ezra alleged that Alex's friend John Hansen assaulted her while she was drunk one night, but Alex disagreed with her recounting of events and was sure that she had slept with him consensually. An investigation was opened up, but later thrown out. When Mengel was in town from deployment, he and McCandless would meet in hotels. During one of these date nights, Mengel discovered messages between Ezra and Alex on her phone and discovered her infidelity with both men. However, she managed to convince him of the Hansen assault story. And Mengel then confronted both men. Mengel broke off his relationship with Ezra as a result of her cheating. Somehow, she blamed Alex Woodworth for the destruction of her relationship and not her own heartless actions. In February of 2018, she had a heated text message exchange with Alex in which she expressed that she never wanted to speak to him again. During the month of February, she made repeated attempts to talk things out with Mengel, but he wasn't having any of it. She had begun keeping journals to express her feelings and wrote them somewhat as letters to certain people, Jason being the most important one. On March 22nd, she returned to Eau Claire from Stanley, where her mother lived, to deliver these journals and exchange a painting with another friend. The painting was extremely significant to her and Mengel's relationship. Upon finding out about her ridding herself of this important part of their history, and seeing her looking disheveled and agitated at Racy's coffee shop that morning, he followed after her on his bike after she drove away from the shop, heading to the home of Alex Woodworth. As Mengel paced outside of Woodworth's home, he noticed Ezra's car running with the driver's side door open. The front door of the house was open as well, and he heard some kind of commotion. A concerned neighbor saw Mengel as suspicious and called the police. They arrived shortly thereafter.
And said they saw you park your bike over here?
Yeah.
And then walk over there, look around in that car. Do you know that person that lives there?
It's my girlfriend's car, or my
Okay.
ex-girlfriend. We're kind of in a situation, and when she talked to me this morning, I was worried because the guy that lives there is involved in an assault case that she's with.
I mean, she's the victim of?
She's the victim of an assault that happened, and when she went to him for consolement, I was gone on military orders.
Okay.
she went to him to talk to him about stuff, and then he kind of took advantage of her too, and she wanted to talk to him, I think today, about some stuff, and I was paranoid because she had fucking like fire in her eyes.
Okay.
So
Who's the girlfriend?
Ezra McCandless.
Okay.
I was just worried because, like...
Was the door standing open over there when you got there on the car?
I knocked like 3 times. I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear a scuffle or anything. So, knocked, yelled, opened the door, and I heard her say, let him help you. Let him help you. So then I said, hey, is everything okay? Is everyone all right now? I mean, I'm a medic in the military, so, like, I was paranoid. I was paranoid that someone was going to do something irrational.
Okay. And they're in the house on the corner here, or?
Yeah, they're on the, I think they're fine, though. I mean, I don't know. I'm just...
I just saw the door to the car was standing open, too.
I wanted to turn her car off. Her car was running, so that's why I was, like, worried, because it was running, and I was like, okay, what's going on? Like, what's going on? Is everything okay?
Hi. Is everything okay here? Yeah. Okay. Somebody called us kind of worried because they saw Jason come over here and he was going in the car and they weren't sure what was going on.
No, everything's fine.
Everything's fine? Okay.
Jason departs, still concerned. Alex and Ezra indicate to the officers that everything is fine, and they too depart the home with Ezra in the driver's seat. Four hours later, Ezra arrived without shoes and covered in mud and blood at the home of Don Sipple. Sipple was a simple dairy farmer in Dunn County, Wisconsin, and a battered young woman was not what he expected to find on that late afternoon. How she came to be in that state, not even she knew, or so she claimed at the time. All she knew was that she was the victim of some kind of assault. Medical aid arrived, and McCandless was transported to a local hospital. Once at the hospital, she claimed to staff and police that she didn't remember what happened. Police investigating the matter and tracing her movement throughout the day knew she had departed from Alex Woodworth's home with Alex. Police, wanting to find Alex, questioned Ezra in her hospital room. Instead of giving you the story in a strictly chronological narrative like I normally do, I've decided to put us into the investigator's shoes for this one. Hearing Ezra's story was quite intriguing to me, even though I personally don't believe a word she says. But I encourage you to listen to her as if she is a victim. That's certainly how Detective Proc saw her, at least in the beginning.
I was assigned to look into at that point, the assault of Ezra McCandless. It was believed that the assault took place in the city of Eau Claire, possibly in a park, possibly Owen Park.
Ezra, at the very beginning of the interview, makes sure to remind Detective Proc that she's a vulnerable victim, in recovery and very much so in need of help. At this point, Ezra's car and, more importantly, Alex, were still missing. Proc's main objective is to find him. Ezra then begins to go through what she can remember of the dramatic event.
So that's kind of what I'm here to talk to you about. But first off, I want to know how you're feeling, how you're doing.
Not great, to be honest. I was a little better this morning, and it got a little bit.
Good.
And then I had a meeting with the doctor and stuff, and they're trying to figure out which medications I should be on. Things like that for depression and anxiety and stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's great that you're meeting with these guys and getting some help. And why don't you tell me about yesterday? What you remember?
Yesterday, I got up in the morning and I got done looking at, because I've been journaling a lot.
Okay.
And I got up and I looked at the journals I was journaling and starting to journal. And I had nothing, and I was watching a little bit of TV and stuff, checking on the dog and the cat. And then I showered and got dressed. And then I thought to myself, like, I'm feeling really good today and really confident. Like, I should go return some stuff that just kind of makes me feel sad. So I was like, I'll do that. And I was like, gonna text Jason about it, but I didn't because I thought I would see him at the coffee shop, be like, hey, you're here. But I knew he was busy doing laundry and stuff today too. So I didn't want to worry him. Not today, but that day. I didn't want to worry him much. So I knew my dad would be mad about it because he didn't want me driving because I'm currently trying to get insurance.
Investigators will have suspects and witnesses begin their retelling of a specific day's events from the beginning. It helps to get a person talking and into the flow of conversation, relaxing them and getting comfortable with speaking. Tedious detail can be a sign of potential deception from a suspect, but without visuals and body language here, it's tough to tell demeanor by vocal tone alone. I thought it was curious that Ezra takes up a very soft, vulnerable vocal tone, in my opinion, to come off as more of a tepid victim than she already has. She begins to talk more openly with Proc, almost the same way you would a therapist.
And I went to town, and I was just feeling really good and positive and stuff.
Okay.
And I went to town, and I got the stuff from the trunk, and I waited for Alex to get dressed and like ready for the day so that he could come downstairs and grab his stuff. And then he suggested we talk for a little while. I said, okay, I can talk for a while because your roommate's home, you know. Because then we weren't alone. Dave was there, so we talked about kind of like just life and like how I've been feeling and like the situation we went through and stuff like that. We just kind of talked, and he seemed kind of iffy about it. He seemed pretty upset still that I've been talking to Jason and stuff. But I told him like, this is how I feel and stuff like that.
Okay.
And then he wanted to talk some more because Jason's shown up, and I understand his concern because of course he's concerned and stuff, and he's just on edge lately too. It's been really hard for everybody.
Okay.
And then we were talking, and then Alex suggested we go somewhere to talk, and I said, okay, that seems okay.
It's tough to tell with the very teenage way she's explaining events, but this is where we get into Ezra's first telling of her time alone in the car with Alex.
And then after that, we were talking stuff, and I was like, I really want to go to like a park and stuff, and I just remember I keep saying that, and then after that, my brain just starts to like fizzle.
All right, so you're at his house talking, you decide to go someplace to talk. Where did you end up going?
I suggested we go to Owen Park, and I don't know if we actually went there or not, because I remember going to Owen Park, but I don't know if I actually got to Owen Park or not. That's the scary thing, because I remember the frog, but I don't know if that's from the other day or...
Okay, so then you left, and what vehicle did you leave in?
It's my car.
Okay. And then who was driving?
I was driving.
Okay. And then Alex was in the passenger seat?
Yeah.
Okay, and then what happened?
And then we were driving, and I was talking about stuff, and he seemed a little upset about some things, and then after that it just kind of gets funky, like, in my brain. Like, I just start to... It's like there's a blank slate.
Ezra is claiming that almost immediately after leaving Alex's house, she just blacked out and woke up walking down a country road, miles away from where she started. Effectively, she can't remember the only part of the story that I haven't told you yet.
What were you talking about?
I was talking about kind of like the like counseling and therapy and stuff me and Jason want to pursue and things like that, and like how I don't think I want him to be writing, like if he does know who's writing my number and stuff on the walls of races, if he could ask them to stop and stuff, because I know I was like, I understand you're hurt and stuff also in the situation, but I don't think it's appropriate. Just talking about stuff like that, trying to get things settled between us, you know, because I haven't talked to him since.
So, as you were driving around, this is what you're talking about. Okay, so then what do you remember next?
I remember just Alex started getting pretty upset about some stuff.
What was he getting upset about?
He was upset because he was upset because of John and stuff. Because I talked a little bit about, like, you probably get questioned and stuff like that. That's what I told him. Is like, I'm sure you might get questioned at some point during the case and things. And he seemed upset about it. But he mostly seemed upset about Jason and I, because he told me, like, that if I proceeded to talk to Jason, he would be very upset.
Ezra says that Alex is upset, kinda sorta, about his roommate assaulting her, which Alex didn't believe, but was most upset that she wanted to get back together with Jason and not him. The more Proc pushes for information, the further along Ezra's memory goes, as she seeks approval from him. She's now claiming to remember emotions, but not events.
Okay. So then what happened?
And then I just kind of remember just trying to explain myself and stuff, and then it just kind of gets, like, fuzzy for me.
Okay.
I just feel like all I can feel is, like, anxiety and, like, pain and stuff.
Okay.
It almost feels like, kind of like if somebody would have blindfolded you, kind of feeling.
How about your car? What do you remember about your car, where it was left?
I don't remember much about that at all, actually. I just remember being really cold. And just kind of like, it's kind of like the feeling of like you don't know what's happening and you're scared and you just need to keep walking and walking and running, and I don't know. Kind of like, I felt kind of like a scared animal. I don't know how to describe it.
How long do you think you were walking before someone found you?
I really don't know. It's very... I keep trying to think about it, and it feels like it just doesn't happen. Like, I try to think about it, and all I can feel is just the feelings, and not, like, seeing.
I mean, the part that's baffling me is how you end up in Menominee.
I don't know, maybe if I got, like, pushed out or something, because I was covered in a lot of mud. I don't know.
Did you drive into a swamp? Did you drive into a lake?
I would have really rememdered that.
Did he drive into a swamp or a lake?
I don't think so.
I mean, it's the part that we're going to, like, obviously we can't find Alex and we can't find your car, so it's a little concerning to us.
Yeah. I just remember being really scared and just being in pain.
What were you scared of?
Being hurt.
By who or what?
Alex.
Okay. By him doing what, though?
By him, like, harming me and making me want to do something he wanted.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
He's been upset at me a couple times when I would go over, because I was kind of seeing Alex for a little while because I was very confused. And he would get kind of upset when I was too sensitive or in pain and stuff during those interactions.
Who was? Jason was or Alex was?
Alex.
Okay. Did Jason do something to Alex?
No.
Did someone else do something to Alex that he's not around?
I don't think so. I wouldn't think someone would, because, like, we haven't seen each other in a long time.
As Proc poses theories, McCandless is rather staunch and sure in her answers, until the idea of something happening to Alex comes up. She claims to remember being afraid of him in the time that she's blocked out, and even throws in his frequent drinking and anger issues, setting up a picture of her alone in a car with a volatile individual. It's only a matter of time before they find what she's done, and she sets the foundation for her defense. Proc continues to softball questions at her, trying not to come right out and ask if she did something to him. But even with just audio, Proc's confusion is felt quite well.
So just so I remember correctly, you guys were no arguments going on at the house. You guys mutually got into your car. Mm-hmm. You started to drive someplace, and as soon as you started to drive, you, as you put it, everything goes fuzzy at that point.
Yeah.
And then you're found a couple hours later wandering around in Menominee, but you have no idea how you got there. You're covered in mud. Is there a place that you would normally go to get covered in mud? Like, I know because you're an artist and you do that type, is there a place that you prefer to go for that type of shoots or photographs or to paint?
That kind of stuff I usually do in Stanley.
Okay.
At my parents' house.
Okay.
Proc ends the interview, walking away with no new knowledge and nothing much of note at all.
Okay. I will leave my card at the front desk or have them put in your property. If you think of something, give me a call and I'll come talk to you. Or if you think of, hey, this is where the car might be, give me a call and we can maybe try to find it that way.
Yeah.
Now, soon after this interview, Alex is discovered brutally murdered in the back of Ezra's incapacitated car on a muddy dirt road. Even though Proc is working in missing persons, since he has an existing rapport with Ezra, he's asked to conduct her second interview. He goes in and buries the lead, asking her again to go over the day's events without revealing to her that anything has been found. Ezra begins to go over the events after leaving Alex's house and departing. She doesn't know at this point that Alex and her car have been found.
Everything's okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And then Jason gets on his bike and rides away?
Yeah.
And then what happens next?
After that, I remember like getting in the car and then saying that we should go to the park in town or one of the parks in town and stuff like that. And then I started, for some reason, feeling a little anxious.
Who got in the car with you?
Alex did.
Where did he get in? Where did he sit?
He was in the passenger seat.
The front passenger seat?
Yeah.
So Alex was in the front passenger seat, you were driving.
Mm-hmm.
And it's your car?
Yep.
Like, where are they by, the ones that you like to go to?
The river.
Okay.
Like Phoenix Park I like because it's right next to the water, stuff like that. So I like those parks a lot.
Okay.
And I just told Jason that I kind of want to be in a public place because I'm still kind of uneasy about things that have happened in the past between me and Alex and stuff.
Ezra continues to set up the premise that she was weary to be alone with Alex. Through everything she says and has said to this point, she's incredibly non-descriptive. Like stuff in that is often all she offers, only elaborating when asked directly for specifics. Even then, once the questions approach the incident, she falls back on traumatic repressed memory.
When you say things that have happened in the past, what do you mean?
In the past, I've felt kind of uneasy about certain things he's talked about and stuff like that.
Like, what has he talked about?
Just kind of his way of thinking.
Okay.
And stuff. Because he likes to talk about philosophy a lot.
Okay.
And I don't really agree with the philosophies that much because they're just they're very negative philosophies. It's kind of like take as much as you want kind of philosophies and stuff like that.
Okay. But he's never harmed you physically?
No.
Alex's interest and passion for philosophy will later be highlighted heavily by Ezra's defense in an attempt to strengthen her self-defense argument, which has to be the dumbest fucking no-testicle thing I've ever heard of. There's no real value in that analysis, but I felt like telling you anyway.
Like never punched you, kicked you, hit you, or done anything physical along those lines towards you?
He's only kind of held me once when I was uncomfortable.
What do you mean, how held you?
Kind of like this, kind of like if this was his arm, kind of like right here.
Okay, why was he doing that? Why was he putting his arm around your neck from behind? Is that the best way to describe it? So you're standing up and he's behind you and his arm is around.
It was kind of during a time of when things were like getting like intimate.
Okay, so it was during a sexual act.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it made me quite uncomfortable. I didn't really like to feel that way because I said that I was too sensitive and stuff, but he kind of got upset a few times because he didn't get to like, it's very crude sounding, but he didn't get to like finish or something. Okay.
But other than him putting his arm around you during intimate times, there was never any physical harm done to you?
No.
He's never punched you, like I said, or kicked you, slapped you, bit you?
Well, he has bit me once, but that was it.
That was during the sexual acts as well?
Yeah. And then, so I drove out of the driveway. And I remember driving a little bit down the road, but then things started to get really, like I started feeling more and more anxious being alone. And then it starts getting really fuzzy from there.
Ezra plays the same game she played the first time, trying to get away with being as vague as possible during important segments and needlessly descriptive during mundane ones. It has all the hallmarks of deception. Proc attempts to get her to remember the events. Not much is different from her first interview, aside from a few trap questions from Proc, setting up for the reveal that Alex's body was found.
So let's try to talk through that fuzzy. Okay. So you're driving towards, I believe it's going to be the west. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're driving west towards, and you come up to a stop sign.
Yeah, and whenever I get anxious, I don't like to drive or anything.
Ezra claims that when she's anxious, she has trouble driving, in an attempt to set up Alex as the driver. She knows that witnesses and police body cam footage would have seen her pulling away, driving the car herself. I'm not sure if she's trying to explain that he had more control over her as the one behind the wheel, or if she wanted police to think that he drove away with her car, but either way, she sounds like she's lying. Most likely she's trying to maintain that she didn't know where they were headed. It's very confusing, but I think that's part of her manipulative personality.
So, I feel like I remember just sitting there and just being anxious and being like, I don't really want to drive. Usually I try to have my friends drive me when I'm anxious. I've had my ex-boyfriend kind of drove me around for almost a whole year because I couldn't do it.
So in one of my reports, there's it said something was carved in your arm?
Yeah.
What happened there?
I remember being really nervous or something.
Okay.
And Alex kept using pronouns that weren't my pronouns.
What do you mean?
I used to go by more neutral pronouns in high school and more masculine pronouns. And I talked to him briefly about it, how I was kind of going through identity things.
Okay.
But now I go by her pronouns because that's how I feel comfortable.
Okay.
But he kept using the he pronouns because he preferred it.
Okay.
And he used to call me boy a lot and stuff like that. And I was just kind of I don't really identify that way anymore.
Okay.
Because I identify kind of feminine and stuff because in the past I just kind of was more masculine for kind of self-protection.
I want to pause and appreciate the comedy in this situation. This girl is trying to explain gender identity and pronouns to a hardened Gen X detective who probably doesn't have a Tumblr, so he's not really following. The frustration is palpable. LOL, as my generation would say.
Okay, where was he?
He was in the passenger. He was in the driver's seat. I was in the passenger. I don't know I think we probably were parked.
That's the second time she's slipped up and said that Alex was in the passenger seat and has to correct herself.
Okay.
I think it was before we started driving again.
Okay.
And it was just because I remember it happening, being grabbed and just feeling hurt and anxious, and then it just starts getting really, really dark and fuzzy for me. Just feeling so anxious.
So part of the reason I'm here is you're saying that you're possibly sexually assaulted by somebody.
Before revealing to Ezra that Alex has been found, he asks her about a possible sexual assault taking place. It puts a bit of a fire under her, as this is what she's vaguely been setting up as a possible defense for her actions, should they be discovered.
When did that take place?
I think maybe that's what happened.
Okay, so you don't know that happened?
No.
Okay.
But I think it might have because of where the cuts are and stuff, because I don't know why somebody would cut my pants or anything.
Okay. And when you say cut, and I haven't seen your pants, were there multiple cuts? A few cuts?
There's cuts on my pants right here. There's a lot of cuts on my pants, and then there's some right here. It was cut.
All right.
This part was
Okay, so which part was cut out or cut up?
This area of my
Okay,
pants.
so your right leg or left leg, do you remember?
This is both legs have it.
Okay, so both legs, the inner thighs were cut. Was it less one cut or multiple cuts?
The right leg was cut, one big cut, and then my tights were ripped quite a bit, and then there was multiple cuts on the outer side of my right leg, and then on this leg it was down here.
Down by when you say down here, is it more by your knee?
Yeah, it was lower than this one.
Okay, so right leg was up by your upper inner thigh, was one big one with your tights ripped, and then the other one was on the outside of the leg. There was multiple cuts.
Yeah.
Through the pants. Did they get down to the skin and everything too? Okay, and then on your left leg, there's just a cut in your pants on your knee.
Yeah. And then my sweater was ripped and cut, and then I have a small cut right here on my stomach.
Okay, your sweater was cut, and you've got a cut on your stomach. Were you bleeding from those at all?
Mm-hmm.
A lot?
I was...
Gushing,
No, it was mostly this area that was bleeding more than...
Also, your right leg inner thigh area was bleeding.
Yep.
But it wasn't a steady running. It was more...
No, it was just smaller, kind of, not smaller, like, it was small bleeding. I don't know how to describe it. Not a lot of gushing blood, but it was bleeding.
It was bleeding, but it wasn't something where...
I haven't had to have stitches.
There we go. Perfect. So you didn't have to have stitches. It wasn't deep enough cut that you need stitches, but it was... You cut through the skin enough to bleed. Okay.
Brock begins to set up for the big reveal. He dives into it without warning and is done this way in order to throw Ezra off her bearings without aggressively confronting her. This is where things start to get interesting.
So we obviously went out and found Don.
Yeah.
Okay. And we started with Don. And it was myself and a couple other detectives, and then we ended up getting a hold of Dunn County and Brett here. And we said, all right, where could she have come from? Because you described to me that yesterday that you walked straight down a road, and there was mud on you, and not too far from Don's house, we found a mud road.
Okay.
Okay. What do you think we found at the end of that mud road?
I don't know.
Well, we followed the mud road and we saw your footprints.
Okay.
Okay. Why would we find your footprints down the mud road? Okay, what do you think we found at the end of the road, Ezra?
Was it me? I mean, my stuff?
What stuff?
Was it my, like, car or anything?
We did find your car. What happened back there, Ezra?
In my car?
Mm-hmm.
I don't fully remember.
Well, what do you remember?
I remember being really scared.
Okay.
And in a lot of pain.
Okay. You know, people make mistakes, Ezra. You know, and the best way for us to help you is try to figure out what happened in that car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I think you know what happened. I really do. I think it did. And I think you know something happened in there. Right?
Yeah.
I know. And I think something happened to Alex, and you know that too. Right?
Yeah.
Ezra caves immediately and admits to lying to the detectives for days about not remembering anything. He then explains that telling people about the traumatic experience is really painful, so she pretended not to remember. And without giving any specifics about the scene, Brock confronts her firmly about what happened on that road.
Okay. What happened to Alex?
To the road, Alex wanted to keep going down the road to have some privacy to talk. And I said, well, there's a lot of nature. I'm sure it'll be fine to talk, because I really like to talk in nature.
Mm-hmm.
And when he grabbed me again, and he put me in the back of the car. And he seemed really upset about stuff, and he kept grabbing me, and I didn't know what to do, and he started cutting my pants.
Who did?
Alex.
Okay.
He started cutting my pants open and stuff, and I didn't know what to do, and it was really scary. And then he started cutting my shirt off of me, and I didn't know what to do, and I went to go make him stop, because he had this arm, and I cut my hand because I kept trying to grab him, and so he kept grabbing me and stuff, and then I finally got free, and I finally got the knife away from him, and then he kept trying to grab me in the back of the car, so I just started to defend myself as fast as I could, and then it's like it got dark, and then and then I woke up, and he just kept trying to attack me, and I didn't know what to do.
Okay.
And it was the scariest thing I've ever experienced in my life, because I've never ever fought back in my whole life.
Okay.
In true Ezra fashion, she explains in as confusing and childlike a manner as she can that Alex tried to attack her with a knife, threw her into the back seat, and disarmed and killed him in self-defense. Before Proc questions for details, I want to note to you, the viewer, that the scene where Alex's body was found had a remarkably small amount of blood for how viciously he was attacked. He was discovered in the back seat, face down, with a scarf wrapped around his neck and his shoes missing. No mud was found on him at all, but he was soaking wet.
So you said you had the knife. Where were you cutting him?
I just was going anywhere and everywhere I could.
Okay.
Just to get him off of me and get away from me.
And did the knife actually make contact with him?
Yes.
Okay.
And even then, he just kept grabbing me and grabbing me and grabbing me.
Okay. So he kept grabbing you after you were stabbing him?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then what happened?
And then after that, she left the car, and he was laying there, and I didn't know what to do.
Okay, so then what happened?
And then so I just waited, and I was confused and scared, and I was just like coming in and out of it. Like it would get dark for a little bit, and then I would come out of it, and I would panic again and hyperventilate, and then it would get dark again.
Okay.
And then I just started running.
Okay. Now, where did this stabbing take place?
It took place in my car and then outside when I was on the ground.
Again, Alex had almost no mud on him at all. The medical examiner would go on to testify that Alex most likely died within seconds of the attack beginning, as some of the wounds were classified as being inflicted both as his heart stopped and afterward.
Okay. All of it. Do you know how you know where your car was then? Pardon?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know who was driving at that point?
I didn't drive my car anywhere after that.
No, who drove you? So now that we're getting to Ezra talking about what happened there, you were saying that your car, where we found it, how did it get to that dirt road?
Alex drove it up the hill a little bit, and then it started getting stuck. So
Okay.
I was like, I can fix it. I can get it out of here. I just need to drive up the road a little farther where it looks like the frost hasn't given out yet.
Okay.
And so I drove up the road a little bit, and then I got out of the car to try to see what was going on, because it was stuck again, and I was like, I don't know what to do about this car being stuck.
Okay.
So I was looking in my car for maybe a board or anything to put underneath the tire to get traction.
Okay.
And then that's when everything started happening.
Okay. And walk me through again what happened there, Ezra.
After I was in the back of my car looking for stuff.
Her story is now that she went into the back seat of the car on her own, looking for a way to get the car unstuck, and then the attack from Alex began. She has this way of only being detailed when Proc laser focuses on specific segments of the story, and it's frustrating. I'll attempt to give a more concise retelling of it at the end of the interview.
Okay, so the car gets stuck. Do you remember what's around you?
No. I just remember there's a lot of trees.
Okay. So you're in the back seat,
Mm-hmm.
or you're looking for something, you said, right?
Yeah.
What happens then?
Alex came after me.
Okay, walk me through that, please.
When I was-
how it happened.
I was in the back seat and I was looking for stuff and I was moving things out of the way, trying to find anything to get my car out of there because I was already anxious as it is. And then Alex came up from behind me and then he just started grabbing me.
Okay, how was he grabbing you?
He grabbed me by the throat
Okay.
and then he pushed me down
When you say he pushed you down, where did he push you down?
in the car.
Okay.
And then he was on top of me and he started cutting things. And it was really scary.
Okay, so he was cutting things on you. What was he cutting again?
My pants.
Okay, and then what happened?
He cut my pants and I tried to grab it and I hurt my hand.
Okay, let's see the hand, please. Okay.
And then I was moving a lot and he cut my leg right here.
Okay. And then what happened?
And then after that, I started trying to wrestle him and fight him off of me and kick and do whatever I could. But I got the knife and then I just started.
How did you get the knife from him?
I grabbed it. I grabbed it from him and I pulled.
What did you grab? The blade or?
I grabbed the blade the one time and that hurt a lot.
Okay.
So I tried grabbing the base of it.
Okay.
And then I don't know.
Okay. So once you have the knife in your hand, what happens?
He kept grabbing me.
Okay, how was he grabbing you?
Grabbing me by the arm and then by, just anywhere. He just kept grabbing me.
Okay.
So I was freaking out. I was just freaking out.
So he's grabbing you, and which hand do you have the knife in?
This one.
Okay. And how are you holding it?
I was just holding it like this.
Okay. So right now you have your fist pointing towards me. Was the blade pointed up or blade pointed down? Do you remember?
I think it was pointed down.
Okay. So then, do you remember where you ended up stabbing him?
I don't really fully know because it was just anything and everywhere.
Okay, anything and everywhere is where you're stabbing him. So was he on top of you? So you have it here. Do you know if you stabbed him in the back or any place?
I don't know if I had it facing up or down.
Okay.
But I just...
Ezra's story is that she and Alex left his house to talk. She wanted to go to a park to be somewhere public because he grabbed her neck one time during sex, so she didn't want to be alone with him. She then begins to get anxious for whatever reason and stops the car to collect herself. Being unable to do so, she asks Alex to take over driving. Alex then drives her out into the middle of nowhere, miles away from where they started, and as they get to the dirt road, the car begins to get stuck. They both get out of the car as Ezra attempts to find something to get the car freed from the mud, and as she searches in her back seat, Alex initiates an assault with a knife. While he's on top of her in the back seat of the car, she gets the knife away from him, stabs him everywhere, and slashes his throat open, and once they're both out of the car, she begins to black out intermittently, and when she comes to, Alex is on the ground, outside of the car dead, and she takes off running. If you're wondering why I left out Alex carving boy into her arm, it's because she admits later on that she did it herself, and not even I could figure out her reasoning. Whew. Alright kids, these interviews have been very tough for me to follow, so I hope I've summarized them in a way that you can understand. What I do find interesting about them is the hallmark traits of manipulation that she's using to try and sell her version of events. We all react to trauma differently, but all she did was lie as much as she could until she was confronted with evidence that contradicted her story. She would then course correct, all the while playing the scared, childlike demeanor up for the detective and doing her best to salvage the situation. Unfortunately for Ezra McCandless, however, it was not bought by the district attorney or the state's prosecutors. On April 6, 2018, Ezra McCandless was arrested and charged with first-degree intentional homicide. The state that Alex Woodworth was found in and the nature of the brutal, intimate attack that he endured were more than enough to convince authorities that this was not a self-defense situation. Her statements in the interviews were extremely inconsistent with the blood evidence collected at the scene, and it was obvious that she, at the very least, wasn't telling authorities the whole story. The theory put forth by prosecutors was that Ezra, after cheating on Jason Mangle with Alex Woodworth, was desperate to rekindle the fractured union. She harbored resentment towards Alex for being part of the cause and wanted him out of the picture as she tried to gain back what she had lost. They portray her as emotionally obsessed with Mangle and willing to do anything to get him back. The defense maintained that Woodworth was a volatile and violent predator who attacked Ezra with a knife in an attempt to sexually assault her. They claimed that Alex was upset that Ezra had chosen Jason over him. Ezra was simply a victim who was brave enough to fight back and ultimately win against this monster. In somewhat of a rare move for people on trial for murder, she took the stand in her own defense. Her story doesn't change much from her interviews aside from the crucial element of how she got the knife from Alex during the attack. Ultimately, however, the inconsistencies in her story and the detailed testimony put forth by experts and witnesses were enough to convince the jury of her guilt. On November 1st, 2019, Ezra McCandless was convicted of first-degree intentional homicide. She was later sentenced to life in prison, with eligibility for parole after 50 years. Ezra McCandless spent her early adult life manipulating her romantic partners, and when it all blew up in her face, she went down about as dark a path as you can go down. She couldn't face the fact that it was her own actions and impulses that got her into the emotional mess that she endured. And unfortunately, she enacted a plan to take out that emotional pain on Alex Woodworth, causing an exponential amount of pain to the entire community that once accepted her. She maintains to this day that she killed him in self-defense and has yet to show any semblance of remorse. The media gave her the quirky title of the killer girlfriend, and even I played into that with my thumbnail. But I do find it unfitting and far too underwhelming a title for her. She was a monster. Plain and simple. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the story of Ezra McCandless. I'm sorry for how long it took me to bring you guys this video. Life has really kicked me in the nuts over the last month. We recently crossed the 500 subscriber milestone, which is crazy to me. And it's very cool to think that that many people like the videos that I'm making. I'm going to do the cliche thing and thank you all from the bottom of my heart. If there's a person, subject, or shit show you want me to cover, leave it down in the comments. Let me know what you think about this case, as I am quite curious on how you guys feel about it. This was the Hawk and Load Case Files. I was your host, Hawk and Load, and until next time, choose your romantic partners wisely.